When I finished the last page of this novella, I had tears welling in my eyes and goosebumps on my forearms. Now, can a good ending save a bad novella? No. But luckily, that's not the case. It's not an overall bad novella. Can a good second half save a slow first half? Yes. And that's the case today. I'm David Desero, and today we're going to be reviewing Out of Body by Jeffrey Ford. This was the first Jeffrey Ford story that I've read, and I went into this with probably unfairly high expectations. Some of the stuff I was reading about this writer was that he was a literary genius, and he was just so damn good. And so I went into this thinking, I was really excited. It's probably not fair to the writer, I guess. They can't control what kind of expectations you have going in, so I'm not going to really consider that in my rating. Yeah, so this is the first Jeffrey Ford novel that I have read. So what kind of story is Out of Body? It falls under a few different categories here. It can fall under paranormal mystery, urban fantasy, and horror. And I would say, obviously, paranormal mystery is probably number one. It's up at the top because that's more than anything, that's what this is. It's a mystery with paranormal elements in it. And another unfair expectation I had when I went in, I originally heard about this through Grimdark Magazine's list of most anticipated novels for 2020. And I had assumed that meant, the most anticipated grimdark novels of 2020, meaning the story was going to have a morally gray protagonist and just a really dark tone. And once I start reading this, I realized it's not that. And I went back to the list that I originally looked at, and it was most anticipated science fiction and fantasy novels, not necessarily grimdark. And even if it did say grimdark's such a hard thing to define. But again, another unfair expectation going into this. The protagonist, Owen, is not morally gray at all. He's a straight up good guy with a good heart. But next, let's talk about pacing. That plays a big role in this story. The first chapter is exciting, and the next 8 chapters are really slow, but then it picks up again at chapter 10. I almost DNF'd it, but I could tell the author was putting things in place. There's a lot of explaining and a lot of learning that the protagonist has to do. While he's doing that, while he's learning all this stuff chapter after chapter, it can be a little slow. It can be really slow. I almost wanted to put it down, but you could tell that the author is setting up all these pieces so that later they can all come together and it'll, be something good. And here's a really bad analogy, but it's like if you're hungry. And so you go to this chef because you heard it's a good chef, and you ask them to make you a meal. But you're also very hungry, like you want to eat now. And the chef starts pulling out all these cooking utensils and taking out all the ingredients. And you're sitting there and you're like, man, I'm really hungry. And then you're like, is there any appetizers I can eat until, the main course? And the chef's like, no. But you can tell, he starts cooking and it smells good, and you could leave. You can go somewhere else and get fast food or make yourself something that's a lot quicker. But you've already waited this long, so you might as well get the reward, get the good meal. That's what this book is. It's a lot of setup, even though it's a novella. So when I say a lot of setup and half the book is setup, it's not that long. The whole book is 176 pages. So you just got to be a little patient in the first half, and the second half is really good. It's really interesting. And you don't have to learn anything anymore because it's all done in the first half. Now, is the main character easy to root for? Our protagonist, Owen, yes, it is easy to root for him. He's a genuinely good dude. He has a good heart, and he's kind of a loner who loves books. So he's highly relatable. Yeah, you want to see good things happen to him and good things happen for him. But because this is a story, that's not how it's going to happen. So is there a worthy antagonist? Yes, the antagonist is much stronger and much, much more violent than Owen, our hero of the story. So you're definitely concerned for him. Yeah, there's definitely a worthy antagonist here. And I can't say too much about it because it's sort of a mystery. So it's really a surprise who the antagonist is, of course, and I'm not going to spoil anything. So let's move on. Does it stick the landing? Yes. All of the set pieces, once put into place, all come together and make a very nice meal. Still going on that bad analogy, but it comes together. It's really good at the end. It's definitely violent and gets kind of dark, but there's a lot of action in the second half. The story has that feel of a roller coaster where you're just kind of going up, 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 and then at the midpoint you just you drop, and it's exciting. And I know first halves, generally speaking, will have a protagonist who is more passive, and then the midpoint happens, and then the character's active. That something happens, they flip the switch. I get that. I just wish there would have been more exciting elements in the first half. Now, as far as reasons to pick up this novella, you should pick this up if you're looking for a short horror novella or a short paranormal mystery. You should also pick this up if you have a fascination with sleep paralysis. This is something Owen struggles with and deals with, throughout his life, but also in the book. It plays a really special role with the story. So maybe if you suffer from that, this could be really interesting to you. Or it could be terrifying. That's really for you to decide. If you like stories about small towns with dark secrets, this is a good one. And who doesn't like those kind of stories? I know me personally, I'm always intrigued by these kind of stories. And especially for a mystery story in particular, the setting works out really well. Reasons not to pick up this novella. Number one, if you are a impatient reader, you might DNF this. Even though it's a novella, it's only 176 pages. If you really need something to be exciting in the first half, other than the first chapter, you will probably get bored with this. Also, if you're looking for a morally gray protagonist and like a really dark kind of story, this is not that. Owen is a genuinely wholesome guy, and he's not a really violent dude. He's just trying to save people. That's it. Also, if you're averse to blood and gore, there's some of that here. Not a ton of it, but it definitely exists. And so if you don't like blood and gore, you probably will be turned off by the more exciting parts of this story. So let's talk about rating. And this was a really tough one to rate because on one hand, I had some expectations that aren't really fair going into it. And on the other hand, the first half was really, really slow, but the second half was really good. So if I cut the book in half and I said, okay, the first half was maybe 2.5 stars, but the second half was 4.5 stars, I think I have to put it somewhere in the middle. I would have to put it somewhere in the middle, giving it 3.5 stars. That's my rating. It's good. It's interesting. You will care about the characters by the end. After the story ends, you definitely get the impression that this is just a one and done, standalone kind of novella. So I don't think there'll be any more after this. But it was interesting enough for me to want to go and read other works by Jeffrey Ford. I think he's an interesting writer, and I want to check out some of his other works. But for this one in particular, man, that first half was, it was just really slow. And I know for a lot of mysteries, like if we're looking at this just as a mystery, normally there's a lot of the character just kind of searching and maybe doing research or trying to find clues and things like that throughout the first half. Whereas in this story, even though it's basically a mystery, the character is just kind of learning about an ability. And I think the story would have benefited greatly from having a mystery right from the start. Like if there was something we had to figure out as readers within the first chapter, because in the first chapter something happens and you're just kind of like, okay, that happened, well, why'd that guy do that? Whatever. And then the story keeps going. If we had something different, if we had something like a mystery, like somebody killed somebody but we don't know who it is, or something like that, especially with such a short story, I think it would have really drove interest for the first half and it would have been that much better. But again, overall, not a bad story, totally worth checking out. And because this was my first time checking out Jeffrey Ford's work, if you guys have any recommendations for other books of his to try, I'm definitely going to read more of his work. So just feel free to comment down below and I'll check those out. But until next time, later.